In fact, make sure that we immediately surge to the border. All those people are seeking asylum.
Raise your hand if your government plan would provide coverage for undocumented immigrants.
I will also immediately put in place a meaningful process for reviewing the cases for asylum. I will release children from cages.
Desperate migrants on a dangerous trek to reach the U.S. border, by foot, by boat, and by hopping a series of fast-moving freight trains, referred to collectively as La Bestia, or the Beast. As Title 42, a Trump-era policy that allowed U.S. Border Patrol to immediately send back migrants to Mexico, came to an end in May 2023, there have been numerous reports that migrants are taking to the rails again to join thousands of asylum seekers across the nearly 2,000-mile U.S. southern border. As you will see in this video, the large number of migrants crossing the U.S. southern border has become overwhelming, expensive, and dangerous in cities across the United States. I believe you'll also agree that we need to gain control of these trains, either through the Mexican military or the United States military. Between 2018 and 2023, the number of migrant encounters at the border has increased by over 400%. Meanwhile, the number of Border Patrol staff has declined. The following timeline and stories include topics such as government corruption, drug and human trafficking, sexual abuse, safety in America, dealing with reality, and evil. Border Patrol overwhelmed. American cities stretched to their financial limits. The southern border out of control. No wonder it's being referred to as the border crisis. Hunger, homelessness, crime, including child trafficking in America.
Toda basura que viene de otro país. Toda basura que viene de otro país recogió Estados Unidos. Mucha gente, como se dice, de malos antecedentes, mucha gente, como se dice, que allá en Ecuador, en Venezuela, fueron delincuentes, aquí mismo los...
As we know, immigrants aren't causing more crime in this country. If they're leading to more of anything, it's more good food and more people who cannot believe how mean we are to our moms.
In fact, the American people is right, completely true. Who come into this country, they don't know. Well, okay, I'm good, but how if they're not good? How they're killer, psychopath, else? No guarantee of that. Why, no security check, no background check.
No security check, no background check. You're worrying about who's crossing the border?
Yes. Of course, me, because I'm like, people are not look normal.
Each year, up to 500,000 migrants from Central America, but also lately from Venezuela, ride on top of boxcars that normally transport grain, cement, and other industrial materials to the U.S. border. Many have been killed or lost limbs when they have fallen off the roof and under the steel wheels of rapidly moving freight cars. In Mexico, little has been done officially to dissuade migrants from riding the rails. Mexican border agents and the National Guard have focused on patrolling roads, and you see more and more migrants hopping the trains as a wider strategy to evade detection. The U.S. Customs and Border Protection hired a public relations firm to come up with a catchy song warning of the dangers of taking the trains. The result? La Bestia Norte.
Migrantes de todas partes, se atrincheran entre los rieles.
This video shows hundreds on the roof of a train making its way north through Mexico. What was once one of the most remote and pristine jungles on planet Earth is now an environmental disaster. Trash litters the banks of the river locals once depended on for water.
So it's about 8 o'clock in the morning on the Rio Turquesa going into the Darien Gap, and we're starting to pass dozens and dozens of these boats coming out completely full of migrants.
3 hours upriver, we come to the last village before reaching the Colombian border. The scene is apocalyptic. There's nowhere to sleep and no adequate facilities for the crush of humanity. People line up to register for the boat ride out, standing for hours under the merciless sun. Although many suffer from heat stroke, the tiny clinic has almost nothing to offer, and many are dying in the jungle.
People who was passing the river, they could just see the dead bodies in front of them.
For centuries, immigrants have come to the United States in search of safety, opportunity, and freedom. Early settlers came by boats from Europe, and since 1886, those arriving in New York City's harbor have been greeted by the Statue of Liberty. Inside, emblazoned on a plaque, are the immortal words from poet Emma Lazarus: "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free." The southwest border, spanning nearly 2,000 miles from South Texas to the Pacific Ocean. It's seen a dramatic increase of people and drugs coming from Mexico since 2021.
Is there a crisis at our southern border?
Senator, there is a very significant...
That's a yes or no question.
There's a very significant...
Is there a crisis?
There is a very significant challenge that we are facing.
Yes or no, is there a crisis?
I believe I've addressed that question.
So you're refusing to answer?
The answer, of course, is yes, it's a crisis.
And this crisis is expensive. In 2018, New York City spent roughly $258 million to fund its immigration services, adjusted for inflation. By fiscal year 2023, the city had spent $1.47 billion servicing those seeking asylum. The city of Chicago spent over $194 million on its new arrivals mission since October 2022.
The idea that we could have a generous system of welfare benefits from health to education and so on, and allow the entire world to access those benefits is just mathematically impossible.
Before you see the full scope of the tragedies that have occurred over the last 4 years, it's important to gain a basic understanding of the process migrants encounter once they reach the border.
A refugee or asylum seeker is a person who has fled their home country and cannot return based on a well-founded fear of persecution due to race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a social group. Refugees make their claims from abroad, while asylum seekers make their claims once they reach the U.S., but they're essentially one and the same. An applicant who is granted refuge or asylum in the U.S. has the right to work, bring their family, and serve in the military. They do not have the right to vote, hold public office, or sit on juries.
They have to wait 150 days to apply for a work permit, and even then it can take 3 to 5 months to obtain it. By March 20th, 2024, the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services reported they received 4,945 applications for work authorization in Chicago. Out of those, 2,247 have received their work permits.
Hundreds of migrants wait for days between the border walls. Women and children are the first to be loaded into Border Patrol vans. Later, single adult males are picked up, until eventually the encampments between the border walls are cleared out. This bus carrying migrants is on its way to the local Border Patrol station. They are then taken into custody to be processed. Other buses take adults without children to this processing center. The migrants first undergo an initial screening, a critically important questioning session conducted by a Border Patrol agent. Depending upon how they answer these initial questions, they could be deported and banned from seeking asylum in the U.S. for another 5 years. Or they could pass the test and get a chance to stay in the United States. The credible fear interview is more in-depth and establishes whether the asylum seeker has fear of persecution in their home country. Migrants also get a criminal background check, medical screening, and finally, a date to appear in court. Next, they're bused to a local hotel, serving as a shelter run by charities. Migrants will be here for a few days, long enough to take a shower, rest, and call relatives. At this point, they are free to go. Some migrants leave shelters on their own, while others are bused or flown to cities across the United States. This is California, but the process is similar in each border state.
In El Paso, Texas, where thousands of migrants have been entering the country illegally. After they enter the United States, authorities will take them to processing facilities, and then it appears that a lot of them end up here on the streets of downtown El Paso, where they choose which state to go to. We've been asking a lot of them here at the bus station, where are you going? Where are you from?
A Denver, vengo de Venezuela.
¿Dónde vas?
Voy a Denver, Colorado.
Denver. ¿A dónde viene?
¿A dónde vengo? De Venezuela.
¿De Venezuela?
Nos vamos a Denver para que nos logren apoyar, ayudar con unos boletos para ir a nuestro destino que es New Jersey.
Where are you going?
Ahorita voy a Denver. Y de Denver voy a un refugio que nos están regalando, nos están apoyando. Ahí mismo en Denver, para los pasajes para Nueva York.
This desolate stretch of the border east of San Diego has become a major crossing point for migrants entering the country illegally. We're following a group of people who live in this area and have taken to providing these migrants with humanitarian aid. And where are they coming from? All over the world. Before the pandemic, nearly 9 out of 10 migrants came from the 4 countries closest to the southern border. Now, for the first time ever, the majority come from elsewhere.
Just after sunrise, we saw the first group of migrants make their way from Mexico, through a gap between the 30-foot steel border fence and rocks. We wondered how all of these migrants knew about this particular entryway into California. The answer was in their hands. TikTok is a social media platform created in China. The post we found had step-by-step instructions for hiring smugglers and detailed directions to that hole we visited.
A Border Patrol agent agreed to speak with us but didn't want to go on camera. Normally, agents are not allowed to be interviewed, and all press requests are typically deferred to a public information officer who rarely ever responds.
No, there's very few of them evading.
How come?
Well, because they allowed them in. They don't evade because they'll let them come in, they load them in the vans, they take them up to Phoenix, give them a $3,000 gift card and a cell phone and send them wherever they want to go.
Most of the drugs trafficked into the United States come in through the ports of entry. So if you want to put resources into anything, put them into the ports of entry. We don't need to build a wall.
At the nation's border checkpoints, thousands of pounds of drugs are also seized, including a frightening rise in the deadly synthetic opioid drug fentanyl. But those known to law enforcement only represent a fraction of the narcotics smuggled into the United States. There is a clear winner in the migration crisis: the cartels. Their profits from the illicit drugs and weapons trades moving across the southern border are estimated in the billions of dollars each year.
Cochise County Sheriff Mark Daniels polices 6,000 square miles of land, including an 84-mile stretch of border alongside U.S. Customs and Border Protection. It's an active cartel operational zone that he says has been neglected. Fourth-generation rancher John Ladd's family has raised cattle on these lands for more than a century.
The cartel strictly controls who comes across the border. The border isn't about immigration, it's about smuggling.
Something he and everyone else around here seems to know about.
It's a business. And it's a big business.
The smuggling organizations control everything, and currently they're pushing them this way.
The Tucson, Arizona sector has seen a 134% increase year over year in migrant encounters. And in fiscal year 2024, it's been the busiest sector in the country.
My name is Amanda Adame, and I am full-time mom, part-time worker, and living on this ranch as fourth generation. They all come with backpacks. They all come camouflaged, and they all have backpacks because you can carry a little bitty brick of Coke for $100,000 or pills of fentanyl or meth. You know, they're carrying all the drugs up here so they can sell it.
Those deaths were tragic, but you cannot connect them to migrant crime.
Are you serious?
Sitting on 50,000 acres of Jim's land. He's a fifth-generation rancher, and this ranch has been overrun by illegals. Jim, you've been tracking it.
Our film from motion-activated cameras has collected 3,050 images since Biden was elected. That's 5 times what it used to be under Trump and Obama. We have not seen the Border Patrol on my ranch lands now for 4 or 5 months because they're busy processing people.
It looks like and it feels like an invasion because it is.
The Republican Party gets a lot of for only landing D-list celebrities, but I do have to hand it to them. Booking the actual pair from the American Gothic painting was a pretty good get.
Is it true that you've actually found dead bodies, and how many?
Well, we've found 17 over the last 30 years. We don't have the give-ups, the asylum seekers. We have the illegals that are in full camouflage and carpet shoes. Every woman that comes across the border gets raped, and then the cartel people hang their underwear in a tree as a trophy status.
No one with these children dumped out on the side of the river here on our farm.
With frustration in her voice.
If this doesn't make you mad and want you to take to the streets, I don't know what will. We found them laying over here. They were crying. They were scared.
The 5 girls were from Honduras and Guatemala. The oldest child was 7 years old. The youngest, just 11 months.
The boy says he wasn't with his mom or dad. He repeats, I came with a migrant group and they left me behind.
¿Vienes con tu mamá o tu papá?
Nadie. Yo venía en un grupo que venía de entrega con usted y al final me dejaron botar y venía aquí a pedir auxilio.
Let's take a look back and examine exactly what brought us to this breaking point.
Joe's legacy of accomplishment over his entire career and over the past 3.5 years is unmatched in modern history.
I would, in fact, make sure that we immediately surge to the border. All those people are seeking asylum. They deserve to be heard. That's who we are. We're a nation that says if you want to flee and you're fleeing oppression, you should come.
Should someone who is here without documents, and that is his only offense, should that person be deported?
That person should not be the focus of deportation.
Raise your hand if your government plan would provide coverage for undocumented immigrants. Okay, let me start with you, Mayor.
I will also immediately put in place a meaningful process for reviewing the cases for asylum. I will release children from cages. I will get rid of the private detention centers. This is irresponsible. It's the height of irresponsibility for the commander-in-chief to suggest that we have to build a wall across our southern border because there are terrorists who are trying to invade the country.
U.S. President Joe Biden signed 6 executive orders on Wednesday, reversing several of former President Donald Trump's hardline immigration policies. The executive actions include immediate lifting of a travel ban and halting construction of the U.S.-Mexico border wall. They come as thousands of Central Americans have been on the move in recent weeks, some aiming to arrive at the U.S. border after Biden's inauguration.
Signing 3 executive orders, including one aimed at reuniting migrant children separated from their families.
In addition to President Biden urging asylum seekers to surge to our border, this was one of his major missteps and a cause of the crisis we find ourselves in currently. Rewatching this clip made me realize this was intentional. As a previous senator, President Biden would know not to repeal President Trump's immigration policies until he worked with Congress to pass into law a bill of his own.
Do you not see a connection between the surge at the border
and the policy changes that Joe Biden has made in his first 2 months.
And we have replaced the Remain in Mexico policy with a safe and orderly triage system, working with our partners in Mexico and humanitarian organizations in the international space.
Like this man telling our affiliate he's been waiting too long at the border and couldn't delay anymore.
The message is quite clear. Do not come. The border is closed. The border is secure.
The United States has not been in complete control of its borders. As a result, many who want to work in our economy have been able to sneak across our border.
We are expelling families. We are expelling single adults under the CDC's authority, under Title 42 of the United States Code, because we are in the midst of a pandemic, and that is a public health imperative.
Secretary Mayorkas announced earlier this week that we're on pace to reach the highest number of apprehensions at the border in the last 20 years. Yet where has the Secretary been? This is where the action is, not Washington, D.C. It's clear that this administration is anti-wall and AWOL.
What about dealing with families? Why are not some not going back? Because Mexico is refusing to take them back. They're saying they won't take them back, not all of them. We're in negotiations with the president of Mexico. I think we're going to see that change. They should all be going back, all be going back. The only people we're not going to let sitting there on the other side of the Rio Grande by themselves with no help are children. The vast majority of people under the age of 18 come to the United States come with a telephone number on a wristband, or come with a telephone number in their pocket in the United States. A mother, a father, a close relative, a grandmama or grandpa. What was happening before is it's taking literally weeks and weeks and maybe even months before anybody pick up the phone and call to see if there really was someone there. Well, we've set up a system now where within 24 hours there's a phone call made. But I've asked her, the VP today, because she's the most qualified person to do it, to lead our efforts with Mexico and the Northern Triangle and the countries that help. We're going to need help in stemming the movement of so many folks stemming the migration to our southern border.
Do you have plans to visit the border?
Not today. Let me start by saying I think we all agree, and Secretary Mayorkas said it a number of times this weekend, let's get these kids out of CBP custody, get them into HHS custody. We've got to treat this issue in a way that is reflective of our values as Americans and do it in a way that is fair and is humane.
A U.S. Marshals task force tracked 46-year-old Juan Jimenez Salas to North Texas after police in Arkansas say he was wanted on 11 felony charges there, including 5 counts of rape, 6 counts of indecency with a child. Salas is an illegal immigrant, had previously been deported before returning to the U.S. at some point.
Heather, well, we've learned that the alleged victims of the sexual assault committed by this wanted felon were 2 sisters under the age of 10. Now, Juan Jimenez Salas was dating their mother in Arkansas.
I kept my commitment and sent a comprehensive immigration bill to the United States Congress. If you believe we need to secure the border, pass it, because it has a lot of money for high-tech border security. We also have to get at the root problem of why people are fleeing, particularly to our southern border from Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. The violence, the corruption, the gangs, the political instability, hunger, hurricanes, earthquakes, natural disasters. When I was vice president, the president asked me to focus on providing help needed to address the root causes of migration, and to help keep people in their own countries instead of being forced to leave.
To folks in this region who are thinking about making that dangerous trek to the United States-Mexico border, do not come. Do not come. The United States will continue to enforce our laws and secure our border.
So, can you commit right now that you will indeed visit the U.S.-Mexico border, and will you do it soon?
Jeremy, let me tell you something. Yes, I will, and I have before. But the reality of it is that we need to prioritize what's happening at the border, and we have to prioritize why people are going. I've been to the border before, I will go again. But when I'm in Guatemala, dealing with root causes, I think we should have a conversation about what's going on in Guatemala.
News conference here in Guatemala City. You had a message for would-be migrants. Don't come. Why should they believe you when they know that people are getting in?
It's extremely dangerous. People are fleeing because of hunger, because of the hurricanes, because of the pandemic. So the reason I am here is to address those issues. We've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I don't understand the point that you're making.
Year-old Yeri Medina Ujoa appeared in court this morning. Investigators say that he used a fake name, posing as a 17-year-old, and had been in the country illegally.
In front of a judge, Ujoa pleads not guilty to the stabbing death of a man last month. According to his arrest report, witnesses found Ujoa covered in blood in an Arlington neighborhood. ICE investigators then determined Ujoa is actually 24, from Honduras, and was in the country illegally.
Will you state your full name for the record?
No mention was made regarding Saenz' possible involvement of the criminal damaging of a Las Cruces coffee shop in 2020. According to the police affidavit, after Arciniega Saenz decapitated James Garcia, he then used the head as a soccer ball. Arciniega Saenz also allegedly kicked Garcia's head against 14 vehicles that were in the park area. In 2017, Arciniega Saenz was a suspect in a murder at a hotel here in Las Cruces as well.
A trip to the border 90 days in the making. A timeline Vice President Kamala Harris defended Friday.
Well, it's not my first trip. I've been to the border many times.
But it is her first since taking office.
You guys have made incredible advances and success in just the last couple of months. We're talking about children. We're talking about families. We're talking about suffering. And our approach has to be thoughtful and effective.
Investigators now say Audain Perez Vasquez, here in front of a judge this morning, had recently been arrested for assault with a deadly weapon in North Carolina. And the 18-year-old is from Guatemala and had been deported in 2018. FHP says Perez Vasquez had spun his car out on the beach line early Tuesday morning, and when a trooper walked up to check on him and asked for his ID, he became belligerent. Then the trooper noticed what looked like a gun inside.
The troopers' first thing was just not to let him get to that weapon in that vehicle because he didn't know what it was.
Investigators say the two got into a fight, with Perez Vasquez punching and kicking the trooper in the ribs before running off into a neighborhood next to the toll road, where he allegedly tried to steal a golf cart and was eventually found and bitten by a sheriff's office canine. FHP wanted him held on no bond. The judge, though, did not do that, but did tell Perez Vasquez that he'll be held because of immigration reasons.
Even if you are able to post the bonds, I don't think you'll be released until that hold is released.
I'm told the trooper who was hurt is out of the hospital and should be back on the job soon.
24-year-old Khalid Awa of Brighton will be held without bail. Among the charges, assault with intent to murder. Police say the defendant yesterday approached Rabbi Shlomo Noginsky, pointed a gun, and demanded the keys to the Jewish school's van. The rabbi fled and fought off the attacker in the park, using his cell phone to photograph his attacker, who then yelled something at him. That audio and witness videotape could be key in determining motive.
We believe this individual is a danger to our community, not just the victim, who we wish a speedy and full recovery to.
Children were attending day camp inside Shiloh Community School at the time of the brazen 1:15 p.m. attack. The rabbi retreated inside the school where he works. The community today gathered for a vigil in the park, the scene of the stabbing. Hate crime or not, the community feels terrorized.
There are 10,503 people under that bridge. They announced that they were no longer going to fly deportation flights back to Haiti. 85% of the people under there are from Haiti. They're fleeing from Haiti.
Tripling in size since Wednesday, all waiting in near 100-degree heat, washing clothes in the Rio Grande and sleeping outside. With staff unable to keep up with processing, state lawmakers are calling on Washington for help. In response, DHS promising a massive movement of migrants, announcing 400 Border Patrol agents are en route. The agency also resuming deportation flights to Haiti within 72 hours, adding our borders are not open and people should not make the dangerous journey.
Freddy Ramingo Mendieta Pando, 23 years of age, is now locked up without the chance of bail. Today, law enforcement has identified him as the man we saw cuffed and shackled, leading them into the woods along the Schuylkill River Trail at Bettswood Park yesterday. Montgomery County DA Kevin Steele says he took them straight to the spots where he had left his ex-wife's body.
He stabbed her to death. And it was a brutal murder, and then he hid evidence and he hid the body.
Steele says the victim has been identified as 23-year-old Karina Torres.
Now we have a young woman, a mother, who leaves a 4-year-old child.
Tonight, a teenager was indicted on multiple charges related to a series of carjacking and robberies in Louisville. Police say the 19-year-old confessed to several crimes over the past 2 weeks, including 4 carjackings and 2 business robberies. In one case, a woman was carjacked at the Circle K on National Turnpike near Glengarry Drive. Her 16-year-old son was shot.
This violent crime spree, committed by just one suspect, managed to terrorize and instill fear in our local community.
Between October 26th and November 8th, LMPD's 3rd Division experienced 4 armed carjackings and 1 business robbery. Today, LMPD's robbery unit said every single one of those incidents could be linked back to one person, a 19-year-old Eder Rivaldo Mayorga Sanchez. He was arrested in connection to 6 separate incidents over the past 3 weeks, ranging from a carjacking and shooting that involved a 16-year-old boy being shot in front of his mother, 3 other carjackings, a robbery at Valero Ontario Road, and then officers discovered Sanchez had stolen a vehicle from a Domino's on Preston Highway in Okolona. LMPD said they plan to prosecute Mayorga Sanchez at the federal level.
Jose Reyes Escobar was driving on Maybank Highway, according to authorities, Saturday evening near Bohicket Road when he crossed the center lane, sideswiped the car, and then hit another head-on. In all, 8 people were taken to the hospital. The Charleston County coroner tells us that 76-year-old Gretchen Gross died in that crash.
True or false, under President Trump, we saw the lowest rate of illegal immigration in 45 years.
I don't know if it's within 45 years, but we certainly saw in 2020 a low level of illegal immigration. 2019
okay. True or false, Secretary Mayorkas? This year, under Joe Biden, we've seen the highest rate of illegal immigration in 61 years.
Again, I don't know the number of years, but it's certainly a historic high.
Let me ask you, in the calendar year 2021, how many illegal immigrants do you expect to have crossed illegally into the United States?
I believe the total number of encounters, as has been referenced in this hearing earlier, is approximately just under 1.7 million.
But there's 2 months remaining. Is it correct that you project over 2 million illegal immigrants in 2021, calendar year 2021?
I believe that is correct, Senator.
How many children will have crossed illegally in 2021?
I believe that thus far, through October 31st, Senator, approximately 125,000 unaccompanied children have been transferred to the shelter and care of Health and Human Services.
The growing concern right now are the number of unaccompanied children that are flocking to the border and ending up in Customs and Border Protection custody because their facilities are more like jail cells and they are not suited for children. They are not child shelters. Last week, Customs and Border Protection had about 1,300 children in their custody. Yesterday, that number was 3,400. Now, under U.S. law, children are not supposed to be held for more than 72 hours.
Children as young as 2 years old are being smuggled across the U.S.-Mexico border without their parents. Almost 10,000 minors from Central America crossed the border illegally in February, nearly double the previous month's figures. The spike comes after a shift in U.S. border policy when President Joe Biden announced his administration would not bar unaccompanied minors from entering the United States. Reuters interviewed over a dozen self-identified smugglers who said some migrant children have even been used as a decoy for the cartel's drug trafficking operations.
This is a crisis of his own making. And by definition, just plain speak, basic English language definition, it is not an emergency.
I agree with AOC that we should get rid of DHS altogether.
That is not correct. I am not in favor of decriminalizing or not having consequence for, we have to keep, let me just be very clear. We have to have a secure border, but I am in favor of saying that we're not going to treat people who are undocumented across the border as criminals. That's correct. That is correct.
I believe if someone crosses over the border, it is illegal, and you would decriminalize it.
I would not make it a crime punishable by jail. It should be a civil enforcement issue, but not a criminal enforcement issue.
Okay.
There should be, you got to play by the rules, but we can't treat people like criminals.
My name's Tim Ballard. I'm the founder of Operation Underground Railroad, which is an organization dedicated to fight human trafficking and child exploitation. Before that, spent 12 years as a special agent and undercover operator, mostly working child crimes and human trafficking investigations. The United States is generally acknowledged as the #1 consumer of child rape material, child exploitation material. So start doing the math and you think, okay, so we're the demand. There's kids who are vulnerable, who are taken, who are lured, who are kidnapped, and the market is the United States. How do we get kids into that market? And so when you start with that and you understand that there's cartels, so they make about $14 million a day in the business of getting kids and people into the United States. We have a policy that facilitates it. If you're in Nicaragua and you want to come to the United States, you paid a couple $1,000s to a smuggler. That smuggler will get you to the border and then hand a child to you. We've been down on the border. I worked there for 10 years. We've seen this. We know this is happening. And they put the child into the hands of this client and they say, just tell the Border Patrol that this is your kid. And they get in and then 72 hours later, they're released. And then they call a number, drop the kid off, and the kid's just recycled. Send them over, put them on a raft, push them over the river. And a Border Patrol agent will actually, it's not their fault, by the way, they're just following policy, but they actually facilitate the trafficking. They're like, oh, come here and come sit in this detention center. And now you just need anyone from the US to come in, easy to falsify paperwork claiming a familial relationship, right? Hey, little Miguel's my nephew. Well, there you go. There was a case that broke me. It was 2006 when one of the children that I had seen in the video we found coming across port of entry. The guy's name was Earl Buchanan. You can look him up. He was smuggling or trafficking these children, and he was actually producing child exploitation material with these children that he was getting and taking across the border. And I saw this child, and the child ran to me at one point and hugged me. And said to me at 5 years old, I don't belong here. His perfect English because he's been basically raised by this monster who had him since he was a baby.
Desperation and frustration growing as groups flow into the U.S.
Children that are unaccompanied, they usually range from 7 to 13. And the smallest one is about 7, and he was by himself.
Constables don't have the authority to detain anyone. Instead, they direct them down the road to this Border Patrol staging area.
¿Y tiene familia aquí en Estados Unidos? Tía. Ana.
They vary from different ages. These are probably all the youngest that we have currently in custody. And these kids cross by themselves. We're starting to see younger and younger kids being brought over by their sponsors, by relatives, by grandparents, paying the fees to smuggle these kids into the country. I'm a father. I don't want to see that. As a Border Patrol agent, I didn't sign up for this.
After meeting with local leaders willing to provide housing for some of the unaccompanied minors already in Texas, President Obama dismissed calls to visit the border.
An incredibly dangerous situation, and it is unlikely that their children will be able to stay.
I have told this administration, and others have told this administration for years, that this was exactly what was going to happen.
What we saw does track what we saw in pictures taken in secret days before. Kids in chain link holding areas using foil blankets. They say the facility was not set up hastily to cope with a glut of immigrant children. They say it is a facility built for adult detainees, converted when the need arose to house hundreds of children.
Those cages that were shown, I think they were very inappropriate. They were built by President Obama's administration, not by Trump.
And not about locking children up, separating them from their parents. And I have to just say that we have to think about this issue in terms of real people. A mother who pays a coyote to transport her child through their country of origin, through the entire country of Mexico, facing unknown peril, to come here. Why would that mother do that?
These photos provided to PBS NewsHour by Congressman Henry Cuellar of Texas show adults and children bunched together on sleeping mats at a makeshift tent facility in Donna, Texas, operated by U.S. Customs and Border Protection. It comes amid an outcry from a bipartisan group of U.S. senators after they toured a border facility last Friday with Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. Press were barred from the trip. Democratic Senator Chris Murphy said that he fought back tears while touring the facility.
The numbers are just continuing to grow, and there's no impedance for these children to be coming in.
The United States of America now is sending a message to those children. If you journey across the desert, you make a long and dangerous trip, we're going to let you in. You can come in, and we're not going to even give you a court date. So the administration right now, the Biden administration right now, is the one that's luring these children to the border with the promise of being able to get in. So
we are building safe, orderly, and humane ways to address the needs of vulnerable children.
President has not been down to the...
Okay, no. Has Kamala Harris been down to see the Biden cages, this facility? Yes or no?
The vice president was at the border.
Has she been down to see this facility? I know she went to El Paso. Has she seen the Biden cages?
They are not cages. And
what are these walls? Yes or no? Has Kamala Harris been down to see these detention facilities?
She has not.
How many illegal aliens have you released who had criminal convictions?
Who have criminal convictions in Mexico? In the
criminal convictions in whatever jurisdiction?
Those individuals, if they pose a public safety threat.
How many individuals with criminal convictions have you released?
Senator, I do not have that.
Okay. Let's specify it more narrowly. How many murderers have you released?
I'm not aware of any murderers whom...
How many rapists have you released?
I'm not aware of any rapists whom...
How many child molesters have you released?
I am not aware of any child molesters whom we have released into the United States, and I should say that...
Senior Customs and Border Patrol leadership have told me that your agency is slow walking and refusing to comply with the order from the federal court to return to the Remain in Mexico policy. What would you say to the judge if the judge was asking why you should not be held in contempt and incarcerated for defying a federal court order?
You know, we've seen some increases over the last year and a half along the southwest border. And so it's important for us to be able to take this information back to Washington, D.C. and work on some of those issues.
Secretary Mayorkas met with Yuma Sector Border Patrol agents. Some agents expressed that Yuma needs more help. Sources mentioned things got tense during the meeting with agents, but neither side wanted to speak on the matter.
Before anybody comes down, a senator, it doesn't matter. They bust as many people out here as they can to whatever other sector.
It may appear that everything's hunky-dory. We know best. I know best.
The commitment remains, and we'll keep fighting. And let me just say, you can turn your back on me, but I'll never turn my back on you.
You did the day you were appointed.
So apparently that happened off camera. Dana and I have been wondering, who else is covering this news?
DHS is rescinding the deportation of an illegal immigrant who killed 19-year-old Adrian Sophia Exum while he was driving drunk. Joining me now, Ken Paxton, Texas Attorney General, Rhonda Exum, Adrian's mother, and Trinette Gamboa, Adrian's cousin. Thanks to all three of you for being here. Rhonda, I absolutely, as a parent, cannot imagine your pain. When you heard your daughter's killer was not going to be deported, what was your reaction?
I mean, to me, by him not being deported, it's like you telling me my daughter's life didn't mean anything.
We invited the vice president down to our district, the border czar. She didn't come. Why? Because she doesn't care. We have met with more ambassadors in our office and probably everyone on this stage than she has, because we understand the importance. We understand the value of the American people, and what we're doing right now is unsafe, it's not smart, and there is no reason for it because we know we can keep this border safe. Now we've put more pressure on the Border Patrol and the communities in and around the border to where, like Leader McCarthy just said, every community is a border community. Americans deserve better than this.
U.S. Marshals took a man into custody in Atlanta, Georgia today.
Investigators say he was the driver who hit Aaron Szymanskis and left the scene on Western Boulevard in Raleigh after the crash on January 21st.
Raleigh police have been looking for the driver who ran from this crash scene for more than 2 weeks. U.S. Marshals, along with Atlanta police, arrested Aldair Leon Oyas on a fugitive from justice warrant. L'Oreal assignment editor Aaron Szymanskis died as a result of her injuries from that crash. Aaron's husband, Ed, and 25-year-old twins, Emily and Eric, have been focusing on rebuilding their lives since the tragedy.
Our energy has been focused on moving forward and living without a mom.
That's right. Jorge Pineda-Barbosa was arrested on April 19th for sexual battery and remains in jail without bond. Police believe there could be as many as 20 more victims. Now they're asking those women to come forward and file a police report against Pineda-Barbosa. One victim has filed a report that led to his arrest. She says the assault happened in February, but she was afraid to come forward. She says the two were at her home doing illegal drugs, and she was afraid at first to come forward, worried she would be arrested. The Grovetown Police Department is encouraging any of his victims or anyone with any information to give them a call, regardless of how they met Pineda-Barbosa or what occurred prior to the alleged assault.
A man accused of murdering a couple in Daytona Beach earlier this month was here in this country illegally. The governor says Gene McKean was arrested back in 2019 on drug charges, but those charges were later dropped. Fox 35's Vicky Carr is digging into why he was not deported 3 years ago.
Governor DeSantis is bashing the Biden administration over the murders of Brenda and Terry Altman.
Please tell me your name.
Gene McKean. According to booking records, the suspect, Gene McKean, is in the country illegally.
A Chester County man is behind bars tonight after he's accused of killing his ex-girlfriend in front of her young children. Police say Danilo Cavalcante stabbed Deborah Brandeo yesterday afternoon outside of her Schuylkill Township home. According to investigators, Brandeo's 7-year-old daughter and 3-year-old son witnessed the crime, and the little girl identified the suspect for police.
Investigators believe a man from Honduras is responsible for driving through this intersection on Sunday night, hitting 7 other cars. He's now in jail on DUI manslaughter charges and on a hold by ICE.
The sheriff's office says this was the suspect's truck, who investigators believe was driving drunk. Troopers arrested this man, Jose Elvier, and charged him with DUI manslaughter. Sheriff Michael Atkinson tells me Elvier is from Honduras and in the country illegally.
29-year-old Delmar Licona tried to take a woman's child in broad daylight back on May 2nd. She was trying to pay her rent when she told police she noticed Licona watching her and her 4-year-old. As she was putting the 4-year-old back in the car, Licona came up behind her and grabbed the child. And that's when the fight began.
We can say that the mother did an outstanding job being a good parent, and the child was safe.
She fought him off. That fight involved pushing and punching Delmar Licona in the face, yelling at him to get away from her child. He also faces charges of aggravated sexual assault of a child from an incident in August 2021. Police records show the mother of a 7-year-old girl found Licona in bed with her daughter, leading her to hit him with her car. As a Honduran national, Licona is being held at the Lubbock County Detention Center on an immigration detainer, meaning he will not be able to bond out.
The Biden administration today welcomed a small victory from the Supreme Court. In a 5-4 decision, the justices ruled the administration may end the former president's so-called Remain in Mexico policy. The policy, formerly known as the Migrant Protection Protocols, MPP, requires asylum seekers to wait in Mexico while their claims are decided.
Now, a federal grand jury has indicted 4 men in connection with the deaths of 53 men, women, and children.
Now, according to court documents, a tractor trailer that was used in this attempted human smuggling event did come back to a San Antonio residence where those 2 men were seen and were found.
For a meeting, Sheriff Javier Salazar sent a frustrated letter to President Joe Biden, saying in part, quote, "I'm angry that I could not stop this massive loss of life in my county. I'm angry that, despite my best efforts to appeal to your administration, I have not received a response."
I can tell you, from the perception from certain Texas sheriffs that I've seen and talked to is we haven't seen them. They haven't been down here. None of them have come to visit.
Miranda Orozco participated in a human smuggling organization that allegedly used trucks
and stash houses to move migrants from Guatemala to Mexico and then across the United States-Mexico border. According to the indictment, the trailer's air conditioning was not working properly as it drove north on a Texas interstate. Earlier this week, Guatemalan authorities arrested Miranda Orozco at the request of the United States, along with several other members of the smuggling organization whom the Guatemalan government intends to prosecute in Guatemala. The department is pursuing Miranda Orozco's extradition.
And family members are understandably going through the motions. They are glad to see some progress in this case, but they know it will not bring their loved one back. Philadelphia police have obtained arrest warrants for 2 of 4 suspects wanted in connection with the brutal and fatal beating of a man outside iconic Pat's Kings of Steaks in South Philadelphia. Authorities said 34-year-old Osvaldo Willie Pedraza and 32-year-old Victor Pedraza are both wanted for murder and other related charges for the death of 28-year-old Isidro Cortez of Queens, New York. While the suspects share a last name, police have not said if the 2 men are related.
This is now the second suspect police have arrested for helping 2 Philadelphia inmates escape prison. Now, yesterday, Nasir Grant was captured and a judge set his bail at $10 million. Jose Flores Huerta is the latest suspect arrested for aiding in the escape of 2 inmates at the Philadelphia Industrial Correctional Center. It's where Flores Huerta was also behind bars in connection to a deadly fight outside Pat's Steaks 2 years ago.
I'm just really in shock that it was really that close to home.
This is the shopping center in Strawberry Mansion where prison escapee Nasir Grant was captured last night.
Do you agree, Chief Ortiz, that the southern border is currently in crisis?
Objection.
Yes. Would you agree, Chief Ortiz, that unprecedented numbers of aliens are illegally entering the United States right now?
Objection.
Yes. When President Biden was elected, did the number of aliens trying to illegally enter the United States increase or decrease?
Objection.
Increase. From your 31 years of experience, has the Border Patrol in a year ever had the number of encounters that it's going to have in 2022?
Objection.
No. Is the crisis that is currently ongoing at the southern border making the border less safe for Americans and aliens alike?
Objection.
Yes. Since President Biden was elected, does this document indicate that aliens illegally entering the United States perceive that they will be able to enter and remain in the United States?
Objection.
Yes. Why is it important to detain and remove demographics that are amenable to the Border Patrol?
One, you want to make sure you have consequences.
Okay. And if you don't have consequences, what is likely going to happen?
Objection.
In my experience, we have seen increases.
It's a real-life house of horrors in eastern Alabama. Disturbing details coming out today that Jose Reyes smothered his girlfriend Sandra Vasquez Ceja with a pillow and killed her juvenile son with his bare hands. All inside this mobile home. Investigators believe Reyes tried to hide the evidence by cutting up both bodies into small pieces. On Monday morning, Ceja's 12-year-old daughter was walking along the road near the mobile home when a concerned motorist called 911.
We need to investigate here as soon as possible. We need him now, right now.
Deputies discovering one of their own seriously hurt.
Got a deputy down.
They're heard on this scanner traffic calling for backup.
If we need you to the scene, use the K9.
And urging others to secure the area.
35, shut down the intersection up there. Just shut it down. Don't let anybody else in except LEO and any medical personnel.
Deputy Ned Bird, a 13-year veteran of the Wake County Sheriff's Office, found shot outside of his car.
The dash camera was rolling.
Law enforcement were seen standing at attention as the coroner left this morning, a police escort trailing behind.
Adriana Maureen Sotelo remains in custody of the U.S. Marshals after her arrest. Her brother, Alder Maureen Sotelo, is still on the run at this hour. Alder, one of 2 brothers charged in the murder of Wake County Deputy Ned Bird.
Yelena, the 31-year-old sister of Alder Maureen Sotelo, was in court here just within the last 90 minutes for her first appearance in federal court. It lasted about 5 minutes here, and in that time, she spoke to the judge through an interpreter, through Spanish, and we learned that she is not a U.S. citizen and could face deportation. Adriana Marin Sotelo is charged with conspiring to help an inmate escape custody. The FBI arrested her last night in Winston-Salem. She's accused of buying the getaway car that federal investigators say her brother used Sunday to drive away from that jail in Virginia.
A 4-day manhunt for Alder Marin Sotelo is over. He was caught in southern Mexico around 1 o'clock this afternoon, and the FBI confirmed his capture less than 2 hours ago. I'm Chris Lovingood.
And I'm Lena Tillett. Marin Sotelo escaped from the Piedmont Regional Jail in Farmville, Virginia on Sunday, and then he was captured more than 2,400 miles away in Guerrero, Mexico.
Immigration politics has taken a new turn in 2022. With a record-breaking 2.4 million crossings at the U.S.-Mexico border this year.
As of today, we've sent 45 buses to Washington, D.C., and there's a whole lot more where that's coming from.
New York City has also been on the receiving end of those buses. It turns out this isn't just a page out of the Republican playbook. Democratic cities like El Paso are also busing migrants to ease what they consider a humanitarian crisis.
Before we began busing illegal immigrants up to New York, it was just Texas and Arizona that bore the brunt of all of the chaos and all the problems that come with it. Now the rest of America is understanding exactly what is going on.
I think the time has come that the United States and our neighbors should have a better understanding and a better relationship than we've ever had.
And on the left,
illegal aliens don't have the right to be here. They broke the law to get here. They never intended to become a part of our social community, and they are not entitled to benefits.
Might be hard to believe, but that was a former Democratic congresswoman.
A home might otherwise be held by citizens or legal immigrants. The public service they use impose burdens on our taxpayers.
Who compete for housing, who compete for classroom space.
So for the last part of the 20th century, both parties and their voters were largely in lockstep. But then, look what happened. So what caused this?
The cockpit is not answering their phone. Our number 1 has been staffed, and our 5 has been staffed.
I'm going to call from Washington. I am in a situation with Americans that learned a possible hijack.
What's going on, Betty? The crap is erratic again. Father, very erratic. Betty, talk to me. Betty, are you there? Betty? Betty?
A plane just What? 737?
What?
The World Trade Center.
Who are you talking to?
Oh, God. Oh, my God.
United 175, New York. We have some problems over here right now. We might have a hijack over here, 2 of them.
Jules, this is Ryan. Listen, on an airplane that's been hijacked. If things will go well, it's not looking good. I just want you to know I absolutely love you. I want you to do good. So happy to find. Same to my parents and everybody. And I just totally love you. And I'll see you later, sir. Bye, babe.
What are those people going to do? All the elevators are blocked out.
What the hell is going on?
Oh my God. So both towers are now.
Okay, now I got an aircraft 6 miles east of the White House. Hello?
Crystal City, just north of Crystal City.
Just to the north of your town.
Yeah, stop all departures.
Pentagon just got hit. No for that. God damn it, I can't even protect my NCA.
United 93, that traffic for you is 1 o'clock, 12 miles eastbound 370.
Negative contact, we're looking United 93.
United 93, Cleveland, if you hear the center ident.
I got that piece of dog. Keep remaining steady. You have a ball board.
Tuesday, 9:47 a.m.
Hi, baby. Baby, you have to listen to me carefully.
I'm on a plane that's been hijacked. I'm on the plane. I'm calling from the plane. I want to tell you I love you. Please tell my children that I love them very much. And I'm so sorry, babe. I hope to be able to see your face again, baby. I love you. Bye.
We're 56865. We have, I believe it is a Boeing 757. Can you see him up there, sir?
That's confirmed. It looks like he's rocking his wings.
Roger.
He's rocking back and forth.
Number 56865, I advise you stay away from that aircraft. Go north as fast as you can.
United 93. Have you got information on that yet?
Yeah, he's down.
He's down?
Yes.
When did he land?
He did not land.
Oh, he's down?
Yes, somewhere up northeast of Camp David.
Sean, it's me. I just wanted to let you know I love you, and I'm stuck in this building in New York. There's lots of smoke, and I just wanted you to know that I love you always.
At number 2 World Trade Center, right. Ladies and students in this office, we're not ready to die, but it's getting bad.
I'm on the 83rd floor. I'm gonna die, aren't I? No. I'm gonna die.
Ma'am, say your prayers. We're going to think positive because you got to help each other get off the floor.
I'm
Now,
gonna die.
A new type of war. That's what it is.
When word got out that the U.S. wouldn't turn Venezuelans away, they showed up at the border by the thousands.
¿Cuántos de ustedes son de Venezuela, puedo preguntar? Todos, absolutamente todos.
In mid-October, under increasing political pressure, the Biden administration brokered a deal that allowed the U.S. to return Venezuelan migrants back to Mexico.
So what would you say by way of explanation? Because people see these families and they feel sorry for them, but they maybe don't know about the criminals. How would you explain to the layperson how that all plays out?
What I would say is looks are deceiving. Don't put too much attention to what you actually see, because there's a lot more to it.
Yet, if they walk far enough, there is an end to that wire.
You're confident this border's secure?
We have a secure border in that is a priority for any nation, including ours and our administration. But there are still a lot of problems that we are trying to fix, given the deterioration that happened over the last 4 years.
Over the weekend, the Vice President said that the border is secure, but we're on track to close the fiscal year with 2 million encounters, breaking last year's record. In the last month alone, fentanyl seizures are up 200%, and we're on pace to break that record also this year. So how is the border secure?
As far as the border, we're taking unprecedented action. We had to fix something that was broken, especially by the last administration.
Dozens of migrants from Texas are being taken to shelters after being dropped off outside Vice President Kamala Harris's house in D.C. Now, Massachusetts lawmakers are also slamming Florida Governor Ron DeSantis for flying migrants to Martha's Vineyard. Screen this morning, 2 Texas buses of migrants arrived at the Naval Observatory in D.C., the Vice President's residence. VP Harris claims our border is secure and denies the crisis. We're sending migrants to her backyard to call on the Biden administration to do its job and secure the border.
First of all, let's agree that people should not be the pawns in a political game. Human beings should not be treated as pawns in a political game. What is happening in terms of sending these migrants, most of whom have fled great harm, and sending them across the country for the sake of some political showmanship, is just irresponsible.
Well, what warning does Texas get when 300,000 people cross over every month? I think it's a bit rich for the mayors of cities up north to say, well, hang on a minute, can you guys just slow things down, give us some more warning, let us sort it out? I think that's a ploy. I think they should be talking to the White House, because the White House has control over the flow. Texas doesn't have any control. whatsoever. It's a big state, it's a reasonably wealthy state, but they just simply don't have the schools, the hospitals, the roads, the housing to cope with that.
The Sheriff's Office is continuing to investigate a shooting that left a man dead in Far East El Paso. Investigators say the incident happened last month in the area of Marvin Lane, an unincorporated part of El Paso County. Detectives have identified and obtained an arrest warrant charging 25-year-old Fernando Segura Soto for the murder of Martin Adame. The Sheriff's Office says 3 other men have already been arrested in connection to the alleged murder. Investigators say all suspects were in the country illegally and have been tied to human smuggling.
Johan Hernandez is set to spend the next 15 years behind bars after pleading guilty to killing 18-year-old Musa Fafano in Maplewood.
Hernandez will serve those 15 years as part of a plea deal back in September, but the victim's family said what happened here in court today was far from justice. The gunman, 21-year-old Johan Hernandez, did not turn and acknowledge the family of Musa Fafana in Essex County Court this morning. Fafana's mother and father were among those who gave victim impact statements. Hernandez was sentenced to 15 years in prison as part of that negotiated plea deal, a deal that angered Fafana's family.
This is America, where when someone do something to somebody and you come to the law, they give you justice. Because 15 years to me, that's not justice for my son.
Right now in the afternoon edition, breaking news, a federal judge has sentenced David DePape to 30 years in prison. The 44-year-old was convicted of attempting to kidnap former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and attacking her husband Paul Pelosi with a hammer. This happened inside the Pelosi's San Francisco home back in October of 2022. During trial testimony, DePape admitted he intended to hold the speaker hostage and, quote, break her kneecaps if she lied to him.
Paul Pelosi is back home after being attacked around 2:30 a.m. last Friday. We're also learning more details about that suspect, David DePape. Today we learned that he's in the U.S. undocumented. Now the question is how is his immigration status going to impact this case? Almost a week since Paul Pelosi was allegedly attacked with a hammer by David DePape, we're learning more details about the suspect. Today, a U.S. Department of Homeland Security spokesperson confirmed to ABC 7 News that DePape could be deported.
Acabó la detención de la persona de nombre Joseph Mario Castorena.
He was captured Saturday in the state of Aguascalientes, where investigators there say he was staying with a family member. The 21-year-old is accused of killing Kenneth Green Luque, his girlfriend and mother of their 2 girls, Maria Serrano, her father, and a neighbor. The murders happened at this Aurora home at the end of October. Since the shooting, police have arrested several of Castorena's family members, his brother Juan Castorena and his cousin Carlos Casillas Flores, both charged with accessory after-the-fact first-degree murder.
Tonight, we highlight the murder of a Colorado Springs man and the 3 suspects charged. Court documents say the men kidnapped Manuel Hernandez Uribe at gunpoint from the El Moro mobile home estates back in June. ICE, or Immigration and Customs Enforcement, tells 13 investigates the suspects are undocumented immigrants. Arrest records say the suspects allegedly executed him and left his body off of Old Stage Road in rural El Paso County.
Detectives say the construction worker who hit and killed Deputy Michael Hartwick with a front loader vehicle should never have been behind the wheel.
That the suspect was in the United States illegally and he didn't have a driver's license, so he should not have been operating that heavy equipment. He says what's worse is that the suspect took off running after he hit the deputy and didn't even stop to render aid. Detectives say another construction worker took that man, Juan Molina Salas's uniform, and hid it while Molina Salas hid in a wooden area off the interstate.
Now more than ever, we're short of workers. We have a population that is not reproducing it on its own with the same level that it used to. The only way we're going to have a great future in America is if we welcome and embrace immigrants, the dreamers, and all of them, because our ultimate goal is to help the dreamers, but get a path to citizenship for all 11 million or however many undocumented there are.
On my first day in office, some of you may recall, cover this area, and you cover it well, I sent Congress a comprehensive piece of legislation that would completely overhaul what has been a broken immigration system for a long time, cracking down on illegal immigration, But congressional Republicans have refused to consider my comprehensive plan. And they rejected my recent request for an additional $3.5 billion to secure the border and funds for 2,000 new asylum personnel, another asylum officers and personnel, and 100 new immigration judges, so people don't have to wait years to get their claims adjudicated, which they have a right to make a claim legally. And the failure to pass and fund this comprehensive plan has increased the challenges that we're seeing at our southwest border. No one knows this better than the Vice President. And to truly understand what's happening there, it's important to step back and see the bigger picture here. The previous administration used a rule called Title 42 to rapidly expel people who crossed the border. It was designed to deal with the pandemic, but it's used as a means to expel people at the border. And under the United States Supreme Court decision, a case on Title 42 later this year, my administration will make a decision, finally, what to do about Title 42. But here's one significant step we're taking. Over the summer, we saw a huge spike in the number of Venezuelans traveling through Mexico and attempting to enter the United States without going through our legal processes. We responded by using and ensuring that there are two safe and lawful ways for someone leaving the country to come to America. First, if they're seeking asylum, they can use an app on their cell phone called CBP1, O-N-E, CBP1, O-N-E. That's to spell it out, not the number one. To schedule an appointment at a port of entry and make their asylum claim there without crossing the border unlawfully and have a decision determined by an asylum officer, do they qualify? If they apply and their application is approved, they can use the same app, the CBP1 app, to present at a port of entry and be able to work in the United States legally for 2 years. That's the process. But if their application is denied, or if they attempt to cross into the United States unlawfully, they'll be returned back to Mexico and will not be eligible for this program after that.
Every morning at 9 a.m., women frantically try to refresh the government app, hoping to get an appointment to enter the U.S. We watch with Karina Braceda, who runs the shelter. By 9:05, all the appointments and hope were gone.
It's lottery with people's lives.
Even for digitally savvy migrants, the experience has been a challenge.
It doesn't want to scan. It doesn't want to scan his face.
They say the app has glitches, and some even claim the facial recognition feature malfunctions for those with darker skin.
I get up to the option to scan my face, but it asks to get closer and closer, but it doesn't do anything. And that's the problem, that it takes a long time to load, and that's where it fails. So we try it again.
Can't even seek asylum on American soil? When did that happen?
Oh, I can answer that for you, Joe. Now! It's in the rule that you just proposed.
So if they making the program available, if they apply and they do it properly, fine. If they don't apply and they try to come through, they're not going to have an opportunity to deal with the program. This new process is orderly, it's safe, and it's humane, and it works. That's several hundred people on average every single day who are not crossing into America illegally. Today, I'm announcing that my administration is going to expand the parole program for people not only from Venezuela, but from Cuba, Nicaragua, and Haiti. Again, these four countries, Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua, and Haiti, these four countries account for most of the people now traveling into Mexico to try to start a new life by crossing the border into the United States of America on the southwest border. We anticipate this action is going to substantially reduce the number of people attempting to cross our southwest border without going through a legal process. In fact, today, I'm announcing that Mexico has agreed to allow to return up to 30,000 persons per month who try, get caught, and get sent back from those four countries, who are apprehended while attempting to unlawfully cross the border, the southwest border. My message is this. If you're trying to leave Cuba, Nicaragua, or Haiti, or have agreed to begin a journey to America, do not just show up at the border. Well, President Harris led this effort. led this effort to make things better in the countries from which they are leaving. And thanks to her leadership, she's been able to generate more than $3.2 billion from the private sector to create jobs and opportunities in El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala. Tell people stay in their own countries, home countries, where it'll be safer and they have some opportunities. We've also set up a joint patrols and law enforcement with Mexico and Guatemala. And next week I'm going to travel to Mexico, where I'm going to meet with President López Obrador.
Now is finally the right time to visit the southern border. Republicans have been calling on you to do this since the beginning.
Because Republicans haven't been serious about this at all. Come on. They haven't been serious about this at all. I wanted to make sure that I knew what the outcome, at least the near outcome, was on Title 42 before I went down. We don't have that yet, so I had to operate. I don't like Title 42.
But before their meeting, he did get a chance to visit the border. Let's take you to that video in El Paso, Texas. It is there President Biden saw the challenges agents are facing firsthand amid record border crossings, averaging 2,500 apprehensions of migrants a day. As the commander-in-chief pledged more resources, Texas Governor Greg Abbott, who has been a harsh critic of Biden, met him on the tarmac and handed him a letter of his plans to help.
I urge him in the letter to see the real chaos.
This is nothing but for show.
Fentanyl is killing more than 70,000 Americans a year. Big, you got it. Let's launch a major surge to stop fentanyl production and the sale and trafficking, with more drug detection machines, inspection cargo, stop pills and powder at the border.
3 years after President Donald Trump signed a new fence on the Arizona border.
Wish we could just have one focus, only one focus.
President Joe Biden is trying to plug massive gaps in the immigration system with policies many supporters dismiss as Trump light. The White House says no decisions have been made yet.
The Department of Homeland Security is certainly continuing to prepare for the eventual lift of Title 42.
It was sort of farcical, this notion that somehow you're going to have a physical structure that's 2,000 miles long.
Why not?
With all due respect, I sit here watching the former president say he did it and somehow Mexico paid for it. It's laughable, those assertions.
Well, you got a better trade deal with Mexico and Canada, NAFTA. But you have stores now in San Francisco, because of smash and grab robberies, they're leaving.
Yeah.
You know, Walgreens is one. I think Target is the other. There's at least three. Whole Foods is another.
Yeah.
You're leaving San Francisco.
Yeah. Certain parts are bad, and we own that. I just put the National Guard and the CHP down there.
We're good.
A cell phone video captures what appears to be an open drug market at 7th and Market Streets in San Francisco around 2 Wednesday morning. People approach the person recording the video, asking him if he wants to buy drugs.
A neighborhood in downtown San Francisco that encompasses about 50 square blocks and is home to some of the highest levels of crime, drug addiction, and homelessness in the city. Tents line the streets, usually at every corner, and the sidewalks tend to be covered with trash. Stores like Walgreens have busted windows. According to Tom, it's because of the city's and previous administration's policies that it's gotten so bad that drug dealers need to be held accountable.
You're going to sell a drug that has contributed to the deaths of 2,200 people in the last 3 years in San Francisco. You need to be held accountable.
I just left Oakland, where the homeless problem is also out of control. There's 5,000 homeless people in Oakland, and that number's growing too. But over here across the bridge, that number's triple.
It's hard to believe, driving through the areas of Van Ness Avenue and Willow Streets, we're just blocks from City Hall.
It has been very, very frustrating that we have to, as a resident, have to witness this chaos every single day.
Tent after tent, open drug dealing, drug use, and a whole host of other safety issues.
Look at this. What a freaking mess. Los Angeles, California, everyone. Honestly, I think it's one of my least liked cities in the USA. Since I was in California for the homecoming tour, I thought I should go back to LA and see if it's the same. But this time, I figured I'd drive into the rest of the city. The goal was to just drive around without an agenda and see how things looked in every pocket of LA. So I spent an entire day meandering around this place one day to see what I could see.
Let me ask you something. What if Seattle is dying and we don't even know it? This story is about a seething, simmering anger that is now boiling over into outrage. It is about lost souls who wander our streets, untethered to home or family or reality, chasing a drug which in turn chases them. It is about the damage they inflict on themselves and a crisis of faith amongst a generation of Seattleites falling out of love with their home.
I have known cops from Compton, Watts, South Central. They have some power in their hand. Here you see a bunch of twinkle toes running around here. What the heck? Because they run the city like that. They're having problems. They're not having enough authority.
There were fires set outside his shop this past summer, and Mr. Derek Shande does not blame police. He believes their power has been stripped away.
The city mayor doesn't give the cops authority. That's the problem.
There has evolved a profound disconnect, and rarely has it been more vividly laid out than in this exchange.
If property crime is committed, violence is committed, you need to call 911 and the police.
You've lost all credibility when you said 2 words. You said call 911. Do you understand that the police have told us to vote you all out so that they can do their jobs? And you're telling us to call 911? You're smiling. You think it's funny?
You're a local resident here. Yeah. You live in, this is the Akumba Boulevard area. We're covering the border migrant crisis. What's going on here in this area?
So there's the migrant crisis where there's encampments, but there's also what's going on in the community that nobody talks to anybody about. And we live right under the 8 here is the actual Border Patrol headquarters. Mm-hmm. And there's a dirt road that runs along the fence line. We live right there. We were told maybe 8 months ago by Border Patrol at the encampment on Jewel Valley Road that anybody that's going through our property, that we're supposed to call them immediately for help because they're fleeing. And if they're fleeing, that means that there's a problem and they need to be picked up. So as soon as they let us know that, we started calling. We called at 2 a.m. Nobody could come.
So are they coming through your property to go to Border Patrol Station?
Oh, no.
What are they doing? Hiding? Evading?
We actually got a pair of infrared binoculars because we were seeing headlights like at us. Now we're on 80 acres, I think it is altogether, and we could see these headlights. So we got these high-powered binoculars with infrared on them, and we're facing the headlights facing us, and you could plainly see gentlemen in shorts with like those skeleton masks over their face with what my husband says was an AK. They're in Jeeps and they were standing up, and this is like 2 a.m, and they're looking at us with binoculars.
What are they doing?
So these are all smugglers. These are all cartel that are cutting through.
Trafficking drugs? People?
I have no idea. When we've walked the property, we haven't found anything, but they're large groups. And about 6 months ago, it changed to a whole bunch of Chinese and Russian. I mean, we could actually hear the men speaking different languages. So it's gotten worse. Our cameras go off all night. Nobody's getting any sleep. Our dogs can't go out. Our dogs will attack someone. So they're stuck in an enclosure all the time, and they're barking throughout the night. I came home from the casino at 11 o'clock at night. I got gas, and as I was backing in on the side of my house, there was a gentleman on the lower part of my property just standing there. And I knew it wasn't my husband or my son because they were in the house.
How long have you been living in this community?
We've been up here 15 years.
Have you ever seen it like this before?
No, never.
When did it all start where it's like a massive amounts of people?
Oh, it's over a year ago. No, it's almost 2 years ago, I think.
This is what certain streets in the center of San Diego, California, look like. Hundreds of tents. Disoriented, homeless people, many of whom are victims of the same disease. Fentanyl addiction.
It's pretty simple, that's all you do.
David is 32. He's been living on the streets for a year and a half.
This is Culiacan, capital of Sinaloa State and stronghold of one of the world's most powerful drug cartels. For decades, the city has been controlled by the narcos, using a combination of wealth and fear. And in these streets, songs of praise ring out for the drug lords.
Soy el ratón, soy Ovidio Guzmán, hijo del Chapo. Soy hermano de Alfredito y de Archibaldo, y por cierto me disculpo por lo del Culiacanazo. Yo no peleé.
Murders happen here daily, the ultimate penalty for upsetting the cartel.
I think it's related to cartels. There's actually a police car behind us and the National Guard. Yeah, they're definitely going where we're going.
Police said that was a hit job gone wrong between cartels. The guy had been shot in the leg, shot in the arm, and hit across the head. He's lucky to survive. Policeman told me this is happening every single day.
On an islet in water too shallow for Mexico's security forces to use their vessels, a man helps load plastic jerry cans filled with chemicals known as precursors. They are the crucial ingredients that make the opioid drug fentanyl. The chemicals are loaded into a car to be whisked away to a safe house. Directions are given to us to join the gang later that night. The back streets of Culiacan, the Sinaloa cartel's headquarters, are controlled by cartel gunmen. We're watched constantly as we drive to the stash house. The precursors are already here. The fentanyl labs are spread across the state of Sinaloa, in towns, villages and the countryside. We're guided up a remote hillside. Hidden beneath trees and tarpaulin sheets is a lab where the synthetic opioid drug is made.
Sí, porque estamos aquí a acetona a la base para darle señal al fentanilo. Y aquí está en un proceso. Estamos esperando que salga poquito vapor para echarle más acetona y echarle propanilo.
So they've just put in the brown powder there was precursors, and they're mixing it now with acetone. Where is it that the precursors are coming from? Do you know?
De China. Sí, porque estamos dando punto final aquí ya el fentanilo puro.
Culiacan, capital of Sinaloa. Victor and his fellow police investigators have received a call from a delivery company saying they have spotted some suspicious packages.
Es fentanilo.
Almost 15 kilograms of blue-tinged tablets in just one seizure, enough to kill the population of an average-sized town.
Jim and Sue Chilton's ranch runs along the U.S.-Mexico border for about 5.5 miles. Most of it is next to this border wall until suddenly the wall stops. It becomes this 3-foot fence here. This is where the Chiltons say most people end up crossing over into the U.S.
I've been told by intelligence officers with the Border Patrol in this area about 20% are packing drugs. So that's 500 drug packers coming to my ranch.
Yet he still pipes water to 29 drinking fountains on the ranch.
Nobody needs to die in the desert, even if they're a drug packer. It's awful. I've had probably 35 people die on the ranch. It's a humanitarian crisis.
This is a high drama side of the greatest mass migration crisis in American history, which the public rarely sees, but too important now to miss. Network news often shows thousands of illegal immigrant border crossers calmly turning themselves in to Border Patrol agents in populated urban areas because they know the Biden administration will quickly process most right into America. Customs and Border Protection officials call these now familiar immigrant crowds give-ups. But out here is the other illegal immigrants who run, hide, and get away by hiking through a vast territory, where the Border Patrol presence has been thinned out or is very scant. Runners who get away are potentially the most dangerous kind because, the thinking goes, They know they have criminal records or are wanted on warrants or are on U.S. gang databases and could get prosecuted for their illegal crossings or deported to face justice in home countries. Yet this immigrant category is ballooning right now, heading for some of the greatest volumes yet. Why? In anticipation of the end of a rapid expulsion policy from the COVID pandemic period, called Title 42, which was used to push back many runners to Mexico, like these 9 Guatemalans just 42'd back last year, a surge over the border began early and is continuing. Far fewer give-ups saw the Title 42 replacement policy as sufficient deterrent to keep waiting in Mexico for a CBP app that they can use to apply for humanitarian permits, and give-ups have been pouring in non-stop. To process them into America, Border Patrol agents were redeployed from remote areas for crowd control and for processing duty in the border cities. Maybe no other sector will personify the problem more than the Border Patrol's El Paso sector, which covers West Texas and most of New Mexico all the way west to the Arizona border.
Most of the drugs trafficked into the United States come in through the ports of entry. So if you want to put resources into anything, put them into the ports of entry. We don't need to build a wall.
It should be no wonder that the gotaways in the rural areas of El Paso sector nearly tripled, from 6,669 to 17,423 in April, after record-smashing peaks of more than 30,000 in December 2022, and again in January 2023, their numbers fell in this sector by half in February and by half again in March. But in April of 2023, thousands of give-ups began swamping the high-population El Paso area, and that required more Border Patrol agents to come in from the sector's hinterlands to process them into the country. The back door is becoming far less guarded out there. In the coming months, America should expect that numbers of potentially criminal alien runners will surge toward the weakened front lines as gotaways. Look at these holes cut out of the old wire mesh border wall inside Mexico, just across from Santa Teresa, New Mexico, and a major Border Patrol station. This George W. Bush-era fencing is where some of the backpacking traffic starts. Mexico's La Linea cartel cut them for a booming runner business into the state of New Mexico. But not this night. With all lights off, Deputy Sheriff Lieutenant Arredondo left his thermal imaging device to rattle off coordinates by radio to help guide 3 Border Patrol agents on foot to block one escape route. A couple of Army National Guardsmen up the road spotted more migrants that had peeled off from the original group. Then Border Patrol agents took off on ATVs with full lights, hoping to rouse the hiding group toward the other agents. After several hours of maneuvering this way as a multi-agency team, the crew eventually caught 14 immigrants in camouflage this night and brought them back to the staging area for processing.
So, where are you from?
What?
Where's everybody from?
Am I from?
Mexico?
They'll be checked for criminal history and warrants later, and probably sent back to Mexico or even prosecuted.
As long as you can search them. Yeah. If you can't, then have them take it off.
This was a winning battle in what appears now to be a losing war. With more agents redeploying to El Paso and elsewhere to deal with give-ups, all the odds are favoring the runners and gotaways now.
If all that wasn't bad enough, there's an even more sinister geopolitical subplot to our story: China. As highlighted earlier, Beijing is known to be supplying the ingredients that make up fentanyl to the Mexican drug cartels. The natural question is why? What does China get out of aiding and abetting criminal organizations? Instability, thousands of deaths each year, a general weakening of the social structure across vast swathes of America. The list could go on.
We advance our efforts to address the root causes of migration. Our administration is simultaneously working to ensure a safe, orderly, and humane processing system at the border. As I have noted, over the last 18 months, migration flows have slowed down from the northern Central American region. But at the end of last year, we saw a rising level of migration from other countries. Congress must fix our broken immigration system, and Congress must provide the necessary funds for border security. In the meantime, our administration will continue to use the tools that we have, which is why President Biden announced last month additional resources for border security, new and expanded lawful pathways under our immigration authorities, and consequences for those who fail to use available pathways. Since the President's announcement, there have been a 99% reduction of irregular migration from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. Ultimately, we need Congress to pass legislation that both enhances border security but fixes our broken immigration system. We are a nation of immigrants. We are a nation of immigrants. And it is immigrants who historically, in addition to all others, who have helped strengthen our country, strengthen our economy, and grow our ability to be innovative in a way that has been a model for other places around the world. So let us, all of us, as leaders, be it in the private or public sector, agree that we must not politicize this issue. Let us get in front of it and let us deal with it in a way that is productive and will strengthen our nation. There is also a serious issue of human smuggling, and I will say as a former prosecutor, having worked on this issue as a line prosecutor and as Attorney General of California, what we see in these behaviors are really predatory actors. And we've got to take this seriously and hold these criminal organizations accountable. Their patterns are quite clear. Smugglers extort thousands of dollars from migrants and subject them to dangerous and inhumane conditions. We've seen examples of where migrants have been abandoned in the desert or packed into the back of a truck, left to die in the heat. Since April of 22, in just the last 10 months, we have made more than 7,000 arrests in this regard, which is the result of our historic increase in the resources that need to be put into arrests and prosecutions. With regard to drug smuggling in particular, we are concerned that what we have been seeing coming across includes deadly and illicit fentanyl trafficking. It has fueled the opioid crisis and is a leading cause of death among the 18 through 42-year-old population in the United States. So our dedication of additional resources, in particular additional personnel and scanning resources, technology, has resulted in a 200% increase in the seizure of fentanyl along the border in the last 2 years. When it comes to transnational criminal organizations, we must attack every aspect of their business and ensure swift and severe accountability for these activities. And that is the work that our administration has been doing, including sanctioning those who do business with known traffickers, freezing bank accounts, and restricting traffickers' access to the materials they use to produce their deadly drugs. So with all of that, I will end with where I started, which is to thank all of the partners here for the work that you are doing.
They like Trump. Can you believe it?
No, I can't believe it.
When you become president, would you be committing to close immigration detention centers?
Absolutely, on day one. People are profiting off of the incarceration of other human beings, who in this case are children. On day one, we'll shut them down.
We are building safe, orderly, and humane ways to address the needs of vulnerable children.
Let's get these kids out of CBP custody, get them into HHS custody. We've got to treat this issue in a way that is reflective
reflective of our values as Americans and do it in a way that is fair and is humane.
Lawmakers urging the Biden administration to provide explanations for the disappearance of 85,000 migrant children.
Representative Juan Ciscomani has written a letter to the administration raising concerns about unaccompanied migrant children being handed over to adults and then failing to keep track of them.
Where are the babies? We still don't know.
Whistleblowers are revealing that the Biden administration is releasing young migrant children into the arms of adult supervisors who have not been properly vetted with a background check.
Each step of this process was vulnerable to human error, increasing the risk that a child could be lost in the system, which is terrible. You should be able to lose children in a government system as easily as in a Chuck E. Cheese ball pit. I'm sorry, we're going to have to call off the search, Mrs. Donaldson. Ralphie's lost to the balls now.
The New York Times is reporting the Biden administration's repeatedly ignored or missed warnings about a surge of migrant children as young as 12 working in factories across the United States.
I found children in every state in the country who are working dangerous, illegal, exploitative jobs. These are jobs in factories and meat processing. And the Biden administration says, well, we had no idea about this. So my reporting has really been into what kind of warnings were missed. How is it possible that these children are everywhere in this country and the administration is saying, well, we didn't know? They were pointed to evidence multiple times. We are worried about these kids. We are worried these kids might be working in chicken processing.
But are being exploited and sexually abused. Is that a possibility? Because it seems like there is no checking in.
The fact is, the government at this point does not know what has happened to thousands and thousands of these children. There was all this pressure in the administration to move those kids out quickly because it was so visible when they were ending up sleeping on the floor, sleeping in these terrible conditions.
We'll give you a microphone.
And what happened after that with all these kids working was much less visible. You know, nobody's going to go and have a big newsreel about children who are working in the poultry plant because you can't get in there. And so it was sort of a trade-off, as it's been explained to me, between this very visible crisis where kids weren't moving out of the shelters quickly enough and this hidden crisis where kids are now working these terrible jobs and often sort of languishing in debt bondage. And these staffers who had to try to connect children with sponsors and move them out of shelters tell me that to them, this often felt worse than even during, child separation under Trump.
New pushback from the Trump administration after days of defense on immigration, sparked by a zero-tolerance policy rolled out recently.
If you are smuggling a child, then we will prosecute you.
The White House argues the policy is a deterrent. And to Ana Ilis, who came from Mexico with her 2 young kids in March, it would have been.
No.
She says she would not have crossed the border if the policy had been in place then, and she knew her family would be separated. Children who are separated from their parents end up under the care of a government resettlement agency. An agency which recently acknowledged it could not track down about 1,500 of the roughly 7,600 kids it placed with families last year.
Where are these kids? Why don't we know where they are?
So we've got 206 children.
Legal Art is suing the government on behalf of parents separated from their children after crossing the U.S.-Mexico border. When the government records don't show a parent's phone number or address, they're designated as unreachable. With no contact information to go on, they turn to local lawyers and investigators, like Heriberto Pop.
Hemos hecho la búsqueda de más o menos 27 familias. Ya creciste mucho.
When Ronnie was deported, his daughter Haiti was still in detention.
Me acuerdo que cuando te llevé estabas pequeñita. Y para mirarte ya grande, una gran jovencita.
They will get here on their own as long as the government gives them permission to show up.
Against all odds, the judge agreed.
More vigorously vet sponsors of unaccompanied minors. DOL and HHS launched a new task force to heighten cooperation and better share information. We also called on Congress to provide the resources this administration has long requested to help us crack down on companies that exploit children for labor. The actions we've taken since February make clear that we will continue to investigate and hold companies accountable.
We are incredibly dedicated to the safety and security of those children.
Well, it doesn't appear so based on what we're reading today in the New York Times, what we're reading and seeing from numbers from your own office. The answer to my question, by the way, is 345,807. That's the number of unaccompanied children who have come across the border on your watch. Do you know what's happening to these children? Have you seen this report from the New York Times? Alone and exploited migrant children work brutal jobs across the United States. Have you seen this?
Senator, I have, and let me share with you what we are doing.
Have you seen these numbers? These are reports of trafficking and abuse of migrant children. You can see a massive surge that begins to happen when? When you come to office in 2021. This is from the New York Times. Thousands of children have ended up in punishing jobs across the country, working overnight in slaughterhouses, replacing roofs, operating machinery in factories, all in violation of child labor laws. For example, there's a young girl named Carolina from Guatemala. She is 15 years old. What does she do? She packages Cheerios overnight at a factory. She says, sometimes I get tired and I feel sick. The Times goes on, her stomach often hurt. She was unsure if that was because of a lack of sleep or the stress of the incessant roar of the machines or her own worry. The Times goes on, far from home, many of these children are under intense pressure to earn money. They have to send cash back home to their families while often being in debt to their sponsors, quote unquote. For what? For smuggling fees, rent, and living expenses. One individual interviewed by the Times said this, and I'm still quoting, "It's the new child labor." One 13-year-old forced to wash hotel sheets in Virginia, kids running milking machines in Vermont, delivering meals in New York City, scrubbing dishes late at night, all in violation of our country's laws. That huge surge of kids across the border because you changed Title 42, when it became an optics crisis, what did you do? You began pressuring officials and agencies to skip the vetting process and get these kids out as soon as possible to sponsors who weren't vetted. Here's the Times again. As shelters filled with children, the administration began loosening vetting restrictions and urging case managers to speed the process along. You have at every stage facilitated this modern-day indentured servitude of minor children. Why should you not be impeached for this?
Senator, I look forward to discussing this issue further because you are misstating the facts.
For migrant children coming to the U.S. is also one of the most hazardous, roofing and construction, despite federal law prohibiting anyone under 18 from doing so.
Children work at night and the auditors come in the morning. Children work with fake IDs. The auditors are checking paperwork, not actually speaking with children.
Hay un pasillo grande después de mi línea, en la última, y pasaban y sí miraba unos que tenían menos edad.
Is the work dangerous?
Yo digo que sí, porque pues si para uno es peligroso, para uno que tiene edad, pues ahora para ellos más. De ir cuando lavan, pues ahí se habían dado cuenta ellos.
Shannon Rebelledo is a 17-year Labor Department investigator. She went to Grand Island, Nebraska last summer after a middle school told police about acid burns on the hand and knee of a 14-year-old girl. The student explained that she worked nights in this slaughterhouse on the edge of town. Each night, the plant was turned over to PSSI for cleaning from 11 to 7 a.m.
They know, but they don't say nothing because just need the people to get the job done.
People to get the job done. Jessica Lima told us turnover of workers was high. In Grand Island, many are at fault. A mother was sentenced to 60 days.
There's a lot of blame.
And in this audio recording, a stepfather is being sentenced to 30 days by Judge Arthur Wetzel.
Obviously, the company that employed this young lady has substantial blame. There's blame to be passed upon the mother who obtained the false documents so her child could work.
Did the Know Your Rights presentation help them in those situations?
Senator, ORR.
That's a yes or no, I think. Do you really think that you're helping these children by releasing them to labor traffickers and, yes, sex traffickers? 85,000 children whom you have no contact with, and your answer is we gave them a presentation before we turned them over to these people who are exploiting them on a scale not seen in this country for 100 years, a century. A century. It's a disgrace in the United States of America.
Senator, we have a thorough vetting process.
Do you require sponsors to document their relationship with the child?
Yes, we go through.
No, you do not. You do not. Have you read the Senate's Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations reports on your office? There was one in 2016. There was one in 2018. There was one in 2020. There was one in 2022. Spanning administrations. What they found is you do not require sponsors to document their relationship with the child. You release them anyway. What about background checks? Do you require background checks on all adults in the household?
In cases where the child is being released to their parents, we do not require background checks. But Senator, I would
Do you
really
require
like
background checks on all adults in the household in any case?
Yes, in some cases we do.
What percentage of cases do you do background checks on the adults in the household?
I don't have that number in front of me.
Do you do home visits in all cases? You can actually see where these children are being released, whose care you're putting them in?
We do not do home visits in all cases. Senator, I'd really like the opportunity to talk about what we are doing.
I know what you're doing, and it's incredibly and totally inadequate. And we can read about it in the New York Times. Since you say you've read it, let's talk a little bit about that New York Times report if we could. Here's a quote from the April 17th installment. Again and again, veteran government staffers and outside contractors told HHS, including reports that reached the secretary, that children appeared to be at risk. Did you warn the secretary that children were at risk?
Senator, I'm in regular contact with the secretary.
Did you warn him that children were at risk?
Safety and well-being of children is our top priority.
Did you warn him that children were at risk?
I'm not going to get into the conversations I've had.
You're here and you're under oath, and this is an oversight hearing, and we need to know what you're doing because you're manifestly not doing your job. Did you warn him that children were at risk? Do you believe that children are at risk? Let's start with that.
Yes.
Okay, did you warn the secretary?
Senator, I'm not going to get into the specifics of my conversation, but I would like the opportunity
Why wouldn't you warn the secretary that children were at risk?
I would like the opportunity to talk about what we
Let's look at what the secretary said to you. At least 5 HHS staff members said they were pushed out after raising concerns about child safety. Mr. Becerra, the secretary, told the ORR director, that's you, right, that if she could not increase the number of discharges, he would find someone who could. And then he went on to say that if Henry Ford had run his plants like this, he would never have become famous and rich. This is not the way you do an assembly line.
These are the faces of migrant runaways. Children who came across the southern border alone were placed by the U.S. government with an adult sponsor and then vanished. Each of these children disappeared from the small town of Culpeper, Virginia.
Within 30 days tops, a couple days sometimes, and then the child just picks up and leaves.
The sponsors be doing more to keep the kids safe in their homes.
I don't know that there's much that they can do. Basically, they are told by the parent back home that's not what they went there for. You know, they didn't go there to go to school, they went there to work. You know, they didn't go there to go to school, they went there to work. You know, they didn't go there to go to school, they went there to work.
My goal is to inspire action to safeguard the lives of migrant children, including the staggering 85,000 that are missing. Today, children will work overnight shifts at slaughterhouses, factories, restaurants to pay their debts to smugglers and traffickers. Today, children will be sold for sex. Today, children will call a hotline to report they are being abused, neglected, and trafficked, and we don't know if they're going to get the help they need. For nearly a decade, unaccompanied children have been suffering in the shadows, And I have to confess, I knew nothing about their suffering until 2021, when I volunteered to help the Biden administration with the crisis at the southern border. As part of Operation Artemis, I was deployed to the Pomona Fairplex Emergency Intake Site in California to help HHS, Office of Refugee Resettlement, reunite children with sponsors in the United States. I thought I was going to help place children in loving homes. Instead, I discovered that children are being trafficked through a sophisticated network that begins with recruiting in home country, smuggling to the U.S. border, and ends when ORR delivers a child to a sponsor. Some sponsors are criminals and traffickers and members of transnational criminal organizations. Some sponsors view children as commodities and assets to be used for earning income. This is why we are witnessing an explosion of labor trafficking. Now, whether it's intentional or not, it could be argued that the United States government has become the middleman in a large-scale, multi-billion-dollar child trafficking operation that is run by bad actors seeking to profit off of the lives of children. As for me, my interest is the safety of the children. So I want to tell you some of what I witnessed personally at the Pomona Fairplex. I saw vulnerable indigenous children from Guatemala who speak Mayan dialects and cannot speak Spanish. That means they cannot ask for help in English, they cannot ask for help in Spanish. They become captives of their sponsors. I have sat with case managers as they've cried to tell me the horror of what has happened to children as they make the journey to this country. I saw apartment buildings where 20, 30, and 40 unaccompanied minors have been released. I saw sponsors trying to simultaneously sponsor children from multiple ORR sites at one time. I saw sponsors using multiple addresses to obtain sponsorships of children. And I saw numerous cases of children in debt bondage, and the child knew they had to stay with the sponsor until the debt was paid. Realizing that we were not offering the children the American dream, but instead putting them in modern-day slavery with wicked overlords, was a terrible revelation. A terrible revelation. These children are a captive victim population with no access to law enforcement or knowledge of their rights. They are extorted, abused, neglected. And that is why I blew the whistle in 2021.
Alejandro Mayorkas said repeatedly at the beginning and throughout his tenure as Secretary of Homeland Security that he would not send back unaccompanied minors. What did that tell parents, teenagers, and smugglers seeking to line their pockets? That this administration was opening the door wide open for unaccompanied minors to enter and stay in the U.S. And the parents, teens, and smugglers around the world heard it loud and clear. A historic 366,000 unaccompanied minors have been encountered just on the southwest border so far under the Biden administration. For those who closely follow border security, border data is tracked month by month. Yet after 28 months of record entry of unaccompanied minors, the Biden administration has not changed its policies to prevent such minors from coming here. Instead, the administration's response has been, get them in faster. Furthermore, MS-13 and other gang members, who are often teenagers, easily enter the U.S. as unaccompanied minors. Too many Americans and migrants have needlessly died at the hands of vicious gang members who were released into our communities. The Biden administration has also recently made the nonsensical decision to stop using DNA testing of suspected fake families at the border. The results are very predictable: a return to more child smuggling, child recycling, and trafficking. Say you're a family, and we'll take your word for it.
Take a look at these numbers. I mean, it's just think about this. A little kid, maybe 8, 9 years old, who came along and went through Central America, through Mexico, seeing horrendous conditions, and then all of a sudden is taken in front of a judge in a language they don't know, in an environment they don't know. They don't have anybody they know along with them, and they're expected to fight their case for asylum in the United States.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Immigration Judge William Snoffer, sitting in the Immigration Court in Portland, Oregon. These are removal proceedings in the matter of Lisa Gonzalez. The respondent is present in court, but without an attorney. For the government this morning, Mr. Shore is appearing on behalf of the Office of Chief Counsel. Also present here in court is the Spanish translator. Now, to the respondent, do you speak and understand Spanish? Sí. Do you want this hearing conducted in Spanish? Sí. Are you a little nervous this morning? See? Do you understand what these proceedings here in court are all about? Do you know what a lawyer is? No? Do you have a lawyer? No?
Once again, House Republicans came together to solve a major crisis facing our nation. A crisis that was created by President Biden's failures. And it's getting worse. Today, the day that we passed this important bill to secure America's border, the strongest bill that this Congress has ever passed, at a time when our border's never been less secure. And you had the Secretary of Homeland Security. Today, Secretary Mayorkas said the border's not open. Well, Mr. Secretary, if 10,000 people coming across our border illegally is not open, I would hate to see what you think is an open border.
And yet again, House Republicans delivered results for the American people with the passage of the Secure the Border Act, the strongest border bill in the history of the United States Congress. This bill was one of our key pillars of our commitment to America. Since day one, when Joe Biden was sworn into office, Joe Biden's policies have caused this catastrophic border crisis. And it's not just a border crisis. It's a national security crisis, an economic crisis, a crime crisis, and a humanitarian crisis.
I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. But I know I'll be a law someday. At least I hope and pray that I will. But today I am still just a bill.
What kind of bill are you?
Why, I'm an immigration bill. And one day the Republicans might create me so I could become a law.
Francisco Oropesa, 38-year-old Mexican national who has allegedly killed 5 of his former Texas neighbors. He apparently was out shooting a weapon, being very loud and belligerent, apparently drinking. The neighbors went outside and asked him to stop shooting that weapon. He then in turn took his AR-15 and allegedly slaughtered a family of 5, including a 9-year-old boy. We have just received word that that man has been apprehended by law enforcement officials, according to folks in Texas. This is San Jacinto County.
7 Alert Center. A Venezuelan migrant has been charged with capital murder after a woman's body was found in downtown El Paso last month. 34-year-old Eddie Jose Ortega Alvarado was found in Dallas-Fort Worth after leaving El Paso. That murder happened at the Budget Lodge Motel in downtown El Paso, and that is where we find ABC7's Carrie Mannix.
Now, this is video ABC7 got from the scene the day it happened. Police say both Ortega and Navas crossed into the U.S., and they were actually both part of a group that stayed here, booked into this hotel the day before he killed her. Police also tell us they were not the only 2 migrants to check into the room that same day.
Every day, more than 400 people per day.
It's one thing to hear the numbers. It's another to see today's newcomers all in one place. The Roosevelt Hotel in Midtown offers medical and mental health screenings, rooms to more than 800 families with children, and a way station of sorts for new arrivals who have the potential to depart from New York.
And to help you to establish your goals and to see what we can do as a city to help you get there, and to give you that critical period of time to enable us to get through to those friends or family members across the country, and then to rebook you so that you don't have to enter our city system.
But many migrants don't have friends or family here.
Bags of food being thrown away.
because the migrants don't want to eat them, and they just go to waste. This is all food that is going to waste. This is insane. This is fresh. This is good food, but they don't want to eat it. They said they don't like it.
Now, what you just saw is this huge amount of food that's been thrown away daily at this big New York City hotel that's being used to house illegal immigrants. Now,
over the weekend in Louisiana, they arrested 18-year-old Juan Carlos Garcia Rodriguez.
Police in Shreveport, Louisiana, making the arrest. Juan illegally crossed into the U.S. earlier this year from Guatemala. He's accused of sexually assaulting and killing 11-year-old Maria Gonzalez at her family's apartment in Pasadena now about 10 days ago. Her body found in a trash bag underneath a bed. They're thankful her accused killer is behind bars.
I ask for justice to do what's right and have no mercy. I ask that it has no mercy, just like he did with my princess.
Pressure continued to build Wednesday to catch Cavalcante. The search perimeter has been rapidly expanding. On Monday night, Cavalcante was caught on camera in a botanical garden. Fear gripping the community, especially for Sarah Brindau. It was her sister that Cavalcante was convicted of murdering in 2021.
The police in Pennsylvania announced they have captured escape prisoner Danilo Cavalcante. The convicted killer escaped from an eastern Pennsylvania prison nearly 2 weeks ago. On August 31st, he was considered armed and extremely dangerous.
Mayor Eric Adams says the city is already running a $12 billion deficit, and it could cost another $12 billion to address the migrant crisis in the next few years.
Every service in this city is going to be impacted. All of us.
City schools also affected, taking in nearly 20,000 more students.
One man gets off, allegedly grabs the $12,000 Rolex on the man's wrist, yanks it off, and appears to push the man to the ground. The victim runs after them, but can't keep up with the motorized scooter. Then on Saturday, a nearly identical crime. Two young women walking near the famous Guggenheim Museum on the Upper East Side, attacked by two men on a scooter. First, the driver appears to swipe for the woman's necklace, but she dodges to the ground. The passenger then goes in for a second try, but the victim's friend drags her away, allowing the woman to get in a few well-placed kicks.
I'm located here at the Migrant Resource Center in San Antonio of San Pedro, not too far from 410, where we are seeing hundreds of migrants, all from different countries, some who have shared with me their experience.
Migrants like this 28-year-old from Venezuela who arrived in Texas last week by train.
Fue una lucha.
He says the journey was a struggle to get here.
Poder trabajar y aunque sea.
And adds what he wants the most now is to be able to work.
The strain of more than 8,000 a day. Crossing the border is moving north to cities like San Antonio, where overflowing shelters mean some migrants sleep outside.
In front of this hotel, because there were American citizen people living here paying $300 a week. And Maura Healy's office called and asked if the illegals, over 100 illegal families, could stay here. He said yes, but only if he could get $700 a week. Therefore, he put a note under all of the American citizens' room, their door in their room.
It's absolutely an issue for these people here today, for the locals. But what happened with Kamala Harris going and getting to the root causes of this problem? And now it's here on our doorstep. That's why we're upset.
Rescuers rush a Vegas showgirl to the hospital. She's one of the victims of a series of stabbings on the Las Vegas Strip.
So a total of 8 victims, again, 2 of which now are deceased, 3 in a critical condition.
He reportedly started stabbing the showgirls with a large kitchen knife that he was holding, and then continued stabbing random strangers as he made his way down the Strip.
Barrios, whose right hand was bruised and cut by his own foot-long chef's knife, was first taken to Sunrise Hospital before being released into police custody. Detectives are looking at data on multiple phones Barrios had in his possession.
This is exactly 2 years ago when thousands of Haitians crossed illegally. The mayor of Eagle Pass, a border city of 30,000, has now declared an emergency in his city.
People can't just come in like this. Right now, you see thousands of people coming in without consequence, and the word's getting out.
Meanwhile, more migrants may be on the way. New video from Mexico's southern city of Tapachula shows masses of Haitians rushing and almost stampeding a refugee center as they demanded expedited visas to travel to the U.S.-Mexico border.
Owen says human smugglers sent thousands of migrants, likely in part to divert law enforcement attention from elsewhere.
I believe it's a money-making opportunity for those smugglers, and I believe it's a distraction for them to cross other things into the country.
Other things like
narcotics, fentanyl, bulk cash, weapons, people of interest, whether it be hardened criminals, gang members, convicted sexual predators.
Owen says his agents should be focused on stopping those kinds of things, but must instead deal with the unrelenting flow of migrants.
This is who we are as a city, but it will require sacrifices from every single level of government.
Tents full of desperate migrants lining Chicago's iconic Lakeshore Drive. Migrant shelters inside O'Hare Airport. Now Chicago is building sprawling tent camps to get migrants off the streets of places like this ahead of the cold winter months. But protests here are growing.
To have the government come in and dump 300 people right next door to me, it is not fair.
The Latino Pilsen neighborhood was the first to build a shelter for migrants.
As many as 4 migrants are now facing criminal charges. They're accused of threatening, even hitting Chicago police officers in the last 2 days.
I think what we're seeing is a decrease in the conditions at the police districts. We're now at nearly 2,000 individuals across the 22 districts across the city of Chicago, and we are losing control.
2 other violent or threatening incidents reported yesterday involving 12th District migrants, according to sources.
You're not welcome!
A migrant crisis came to Staten Island today as dozens of recent immigrants were bused to a former Catholic school here for housing. Residents were furious.
Go home! Where's the children? You're not welcome!
We have an all-girls Catholic high school literally 50 feet from this facility.
Come down here and see this neighborhood and what's here and how the children are so close to it. We're not going to stand for it. I'm very sorry. We're not going to do it. I fought before for Hill, and I'll fight now for Hill. And I'm not moving from this spot till this is closed. That is it.
Medina was stabbed to death. Medina was a high school cheerleader in Edna, a small town located 100 miles south of Houston. Last week, her mother, Jackie, says she found her body in a bathtub at their apartment.
Nobody ever wants to see their child in a bathtub the way I found her.
On Saturday, Edna police and the Texas Rangers arrested 23-year-old Rafael Govea Romero in Schulenburg. Edna police say Romero is from Mexico and was living in the U.S. on an expired visa.
Tonight, Denver, joining the growing list of cities struggling to handle a record surge of migrants, with entire blocks full of migrants sleeping on the street.
We have been pushing really hard that there are 3 key items we need right now. We definitely need the Congress to take action on $1 for support for cities. That's key. I think the second is we need more work authorization for folks that are arriving to our cities. The biggest issue is we have folks here who want to work and are not able to work. And the third is we need their help on a plan for coordinated entry.
Mayor Johnson says Denver expects to spend as much as $100 million on migrants in the next year, but they're only budgeted for $20 million. Johnston is under increasing pressure from counties outside of Denver that are not taking in migrants. Suburban Douglas County passing a resolution demanding Denver drop its status as a sanctuary city, a jurisdiction where officials won't enforce federal immigration laws. Critics say that attracts more migrants, with illegal crossings at the southern border this year at record highs. Physicians at Denver Health telling us they treat everyone who comes to the ER regardless of immigration status or ability to pay. But they're struggling to handle a spike in migrant patients.
It's been really, really hard to take care of them, both in terms of their inability to pay, but also just the sheer volume of patients that we weren't expecting.
Meanwhile, Denver's public schools are also scrambling to keep up, with nearly 3,000 new migrant students.
So we've had around 100, which makes about 20% now of our student body.
Thousands of migrants have been dropped off into San Diego County. Local cities and nonprofits are feeling the strain and say they need help.
This is a problem caused by the federal government.
Thank you so much.
I'll answer one question on the border wall. The border wall, the money was appropriated for the border wall. I tried to get them to reappropriate, to redirect that money. They didn't, they wouldn't. And in the meantime, There's nothing under the law other than they have to use the money for what it was appropriated. I can't stop that.
Do you believe the border wall works?
No.
Is put up a fence across Canada and Mexico. Okay, I mean, maybe that'll be good for those of us who want to invest in infrastructure. But their jobs in infrastructure. We're looking at military resources being focused again on the president's vanity project instead of focused on real national security issues. And listen, I support a strong border in terms of having border safety and security. But this is a whole other thing, and it really is about a campaign promise and a vanity project, and it's irresponsible.
I would like to see every illegal immigrant who wants to come here to be properly vetted and background checked. I hear a lot about more funding, resources, and all that. How is that going to help them do their job in the first place? They failed Kayla by not checking her murderer's background and did not make that one phone call. One phone call could have saved my baby's life. They didn't. And after he was arrested, they put him, Child Protective Services took him and put him in an unsecured children's home with other children. And I know Americans commit crimes on other Americans, but why do we have to take other countries' trash?
The crime, so horrific, Kayla's body had to be fully covered during her funeral.
Because of the injuries she endured, she needed a dress that would cover her arms and neck.
Martinez illegally entered the U.S. from El Salvador. The judge handing down a 70-year sentence, but prosecutors dropping a bombshell accusation.
What surprised us was that he said he committed 4 murders and 2 rapes.
Martinez confessing to those crimes in a letter sent to a pastor in El Salvador.
I knew in the beginning that it wasn't his first crime.
We talked about a lot today about more resources at the border. And I appreciate that, and I respect that. But I don't think that members in this room and other rooms at the Capitol understand that we are actually at war. And we're at war with the cartels. We're losing our children. We're losing a generation of children. We're at war. We need our military at the border. That's what we need. We don't need more Border Patrol. We need our military at the border, stopping the drugs, stopping people from coming in. They can't come in. We're full. We're closed. That's it. No more money.
John and Christina, this was absolutely an emotional day for Ashley's parents. Now, they stood behind Governor Katie Hobbs as she signed off on this piece of legislation that they've been working towards for the past 3 years. The Ashley Dunn Act signed into law in direct response to the fentanyl crisis.
She used 1 ounce of 1 counterfeit Percocet tablet. She was poisoned by fentanyl on May 23rd of 2021.
Ashley Dunn was just 26 years old.
She died on May 26th of 2021 because my husband and I had to disconnect her life support. She was in intensive care for 86 hours.
I miss my daughter.
And I want to talk about another top issue, the border. Now, I love how I turn on and Biden's for a free and open border. Just tear down everything. Let everybody come. No restrictions. Well, I used to be a bipartisan in this country, and it should be one again. I've been clear from the very beginning, the system is broken. My first day in office, I sent Congress a comprehensive plan on immigration reform. My friends on the other side have done nothing with that.
Does a bill become a law? Funny you should ask. Well, first I go to the House, and they vote on me, but then I need from the Senate a majority. And if I pass the legislative test, then I wind up on the president's desk. And I say, my sweet, what y'all whipping? My legs.
There's actually an even easier way to get things done around here. It's called an executive order.
I'm an executive order, and I pretty
much just happened.
Over and over, I've asked for resources to step up action at the border. In October, I asked Congress to fund for funding that would add another 22,000 additional border agents and officers, hundreds of new immigration judges to make the judgments on the spot, a new detection equipment to stop fentanyl from coming into the country. And by the way, I've worked with China and Mexico to slow the flow of fentanyl in the United States. As I speak, it's way down. So let me be clear. My team has been at the table for weeks now with a bipartisan group of senators to negotiate a deal, including border, because I believe we need significant policy changes at the border, including changes in our asylum system to ensure that we have authorities we need to control the border. And I'm ready to act. I think, hope God willing, and the creek not rising, as my grandpa would say. I think next week we ought to be able to work out something, at least in the Senate.
4 times, ICE officials tell Fox News they deported the suspect, Jose Menevar. And if convicted in this deadly crash, it will be his 6th DUI. ICE tells Fox Menevar is from El Salvador and was first removed from this country in 2009. When in the U.S., he has been in and out of jail. 4 days before the deadly accident, he pled guilty to a previous DUI offense. Boulder County Judge Zachary Malkinson sentenced him to probation and work release, even as prosecutors requested a year in jail.
Arrested and charged in Bedford County with abducting a teen from Ohio. That suspect in court today.
Dolan tells me Garcia Cruz is facing serious charges back in Ohio, so they wanted to wrap things up here quickly.
The 15-year-old victim is unaccompanied and from Honduras. Her sponsor was Cruz's girlfriend. Cruz is an undocumented Mexican citizen. The Butler County Sheriff's Office had several warrants out for his arrest. With the work of multiple agencies, including the Bedford County Sheriff's Office and the FBI.
Chicago police arrested this man last month, Wilson Vasquez, charged with sex trafficking 2 women from Venezuela who migrated to Houston and then northwest suburban Elgin. He has pleaded not guilty. According to documents shared with the I-Team, Vasquez arranged for men to come to the hotel where the victims were located and forced to engage in sexual acts. And I-Team data analysis reveals recent migration is among the top risk factors for both labor and sex trafficking in the U.S. In 2021, 429 reported victims who experienced some form of sex trafficking were recent migrants.
What building inspectors tell us was this: there were at least 14 bunk beds and more than a dozen other beds occupying both the cellar and first floor of that store. The building owner tells us he was housing migrants here, migrants who have now been vacated. The FDNY says there was no ventilation, there wasn't any natural light. The Department of Buildings has slapped the landlord with 2 violations.
One day morning, I come outside, I see bikes in the back. That's when I got alarmed. When I saw the e-bikes, and then all over the news, you see that these e-bikes are exploding and they lighten up the whole block. Like nobody's safety he was concerned about.
Of Denver, and folks who live in that suburb came out to voice concerns over actions they say their city is taking amid worry it could lead to an influx of immigrants. This as the city voted on a housing plan and whether or not to accept a $9.3 million grant for a, quote, navigation center for the unhoused.
You're going to incentivize something that you're not going to be able to deal with long term.
Citizens of Lakewood are drowning, and you're all talking about adding more water.
In November, my team began serious negotiation with a bipartisan group of senators. The result was a bipartisan bill with the toughest set of border security reforms we've ever seen. Oh, you don't think so?
Oh, you don't like that? Oh, you don't like that? Oh, anybody want to say something to me?
I do. Boo! Liar.
What?
We crushed crooked Joe Biden's disastrous open borders bill. Crushed it.
If you're from El Salvador, you ain't welcome no more. If you're from Haiti, bye-bye, lady. If you're from the Philippines, look, rhymes are not what we're here for, all right? The point is, Trump wants fewer immigrants coming into the U.S.
Lincoln Riley, an innocent young woman who was killed by an illegal
That's right. But how many of the thousands of people being killed by illegals? To her parents, I say, my heart goes out to you, having lost children myself. I understand.
There's a number one issue in America, and that's securing the border. It's an issue on which he has failed, and he waited 40 minutes to even bring it up. The House has passed an effective border security plan. If Joe Biden really believes in compromise, he would work with the House chamber and work with the House Speaker and say, this is a program we'll begin to work with and actually pass a border bill. Remember this, what was going on in the Senate was not a border bill. It was a Ukraine funding bill that has some border issues attached to it. And know this, what was attached to it, it didn't secure the border. It codified illegal immigration. You see increasing evidence that we have criminals who have been let out of Venezuelan prisons who are coming across the border, wrecking carnage across the United States. We have people crossing the border on the terrorist watch list in record numbers. Who knows what type of terrorism they will be causing in future years because Joe Biden let them into the United States.
Riley's suspected killer, 26-year-old Jose Ibarra, is in an Athens jail without bond. He faces several charges, including malice murder and aggravated assault. Police also arrested Ibarra's brother Diego during Riley's death investigation. They say he had a fake green card, and federal prosecutors say he has ties to a Venezuelan gang. We're also learning this week about a third Ibarra brother. Feds say investigators arrested him after he also entered the U.S. illegally.
Police say Lakin was murdered while jogging on the University of Georgia campus last month. An angel on earth, her heartbroken father says, now gone far too soon.
You saw Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. It was priceless. You feigned shock at seeing her. But during your response to her heckling of you, you used the word illegal when talking about the man who allegedly killed Laken Riley.
An undocumented person. And I shouldn't have used illegal. It's undocumented.
It has been incredibly difficult to find stats on illegal aliens that commit crimes in the United States. Texas is one of the few states that records criminal convictions and arrests by immigration status. Texas law enforcement agencies work with the Department of Homeland Security to check the biometric information of people who are arrested in the state. The Texas DPS keeps the results of these checks, which are labeled as PEP. So I had to spend quite a bit of time doing deep dives in Google, YouTube, and various news outlets to find information on these criminals and crimes. The monsters you see on this page are responsible for horrendous crimes, ranging from murder to rape. Activists have been misusing data from the Texas Department of Public Safety in studies claiming that illegal immigrants have relatively low crime rates. These studies do not appreciate that it can take years for Texas to identify convicts as illegal immigrants while they are in custody. As a result, the studies misclassify as native-born a significant number of offenders who are later identified as illegal immigrants. Due to delays in identification, the number of illegal immigrants arrested or incarcerated in Texas is undercounted at any given time. Recently convicted illegal immigrants are the most likely to be undercounted. Conversely, Texas is more likely to ascertain the immigration status of offenders who have served long prison terms for serious crimes. Properly interpreted, the DPS data suggests that illegal immigrants in Texas are convicted of homicide and sexual assault at higher rates than the state average. Significant uncertainties remain, however, especially regarding lesser offenses. This concludes part 1, but there's a lot more to this story. Stay tuned for part 2, which will include footage from the debate and any recent migrant updates. Here are a few clips for a preview. Thanks for watching. Please like this video and share it with your friends so they know how to vote in the upcoming election.